everybody, so I did a Pokemon Radical Red challenge before where I beat the Elite Four using Brock's team. But now it's time we do it using Misty's team. Like I said before, water is one of my most favorite types of Pokemon, and so it makes me pretty excited to do this. But before I continue on any further, if you guys do like the video down below to show your support, which doesn't cost you guys anything. And if you're brand new to the channel and you guys haven't subscribed to it and haven't clicked the bell for notification, be sure you guys hit the subscribe button and click the bell as well. And it doesn't cost you guys anything, and it doesn't bite you guys in the butt. Look at Gyarados. I also want to point this out here, but for the next 2 months, I decided that I'm going to be doing Radical Red challenges, and the time they will go up, I want to try and get them up every Wednesday at 2 o'clock p.m. But these challenges do take some time to make, and so I hope you guys are going to be patient with them. And also, I did a recording of Misty's team beforehand, but Pokemon Radical Red did actually get recently an update, and so I decided to start all over again with the recent update. The rules to the challenge are going to be in the description below, but now with all the introductions out of the way, it's now time to dive into the ocean for the underwater ballet, because it's now time to meet on Misty's water type team. First things first, we have Carbuncle the Starmie. Starmie is her ace Pokemon, holding the Choice Scarf, and we have the Timid Nature. Most of these moves aren't actually gonna be permanent, but we'll get to those moves once we actually get to those moves. We had the Natural Cure ability so that we could heal from any statuses once we switch out from it. And we had the moves Dazzling Gleam, Psychic, Ice Beam, and Thunder. Dazzling Gleam is mostly to help against Bruno, while Psychic is mostly to help against Agapa. Ice Beam is for Lance, and Thunder is temporarily for Lorelei. But after we're done with Lorelei, I am gonna get rid of Thunder and replace it with Scald again, so it's not a permanent move to keep on Starmie. Next up is Beauty the Lapras, which is now a Water and Dragon type, and it's holding the leftovers with the Calm Nature. Having Water Absorb for its ability, I decided to get a Water Absorb mostly to help deal against Water type attacks, mostly against Lorelei. But the thing is, Beauty doesn't actually get Shell Armor, so because of that, I cannot teach a Shell Armor to block critical hits. So Water Absorb is basically the best option that we have going for us. It has the moves Ice Shot, Scald, Draco Meteor, Freeze Dry. Ice Shot is relatively just there for priority, while Scald is for burning. Draco Meteor because Lapras in Radical Red is a Water and Dragon type, so that basically gives it a stab boost. And Freeze Dry is again against Lorelei, and it's basically gonna be our best type Ice type attack other than like Ice Beam. But I think Freeze Dry is a much better choice on Beauty here. Next up, we have Twitter the Quagsire, holding the leftovers with the Relaxed Nature. It has Water Absorb for its ability, which is basically its best ability, solely because its other abilities aren't very good. So it's basically its best ability that Quagsire can get. It has the moves Mudshot, Scald, Stockpile, Recover. Mudshot is mostly to lower down speed to help go into our other Pokemon, because in Radical Red, all the Elite Four team members are going to be EV trained, so Mudshot is actually a pretty good idea here. Scald is again for burning. Stockpile is for us to take more hits, because Twitter is a much more of a bulky Pokemon, so we can use Stockpile in order to take more hits. And Recover is there for us to gain back more HP, for us to constantly keep going more further with Twitter. Twitter does get hurt by a critical hit, but I hope that actually doesn't become a problem for the Elite Four challenge. Next up, we have Light, the Lantern, returning back to the team, holding the Choice Specs, with the modest nature and having Volt Absorb for its ability, so now it gets restored HP when it gets hit by an electric type attack. With the moves, Thunder Wave, Scald, Volt Switch, Thunder. Thunder Wave is mostly just to paralyze our opponents. Scald is for burning, obviously I said that before multiple times. Volt Switch to switch out our Pokemon with it. And Thunder is temporarily, again, just for Lorelei. I'm prepping up so that I could face against Lorelei's water type team so that we could have a mirror match. So Thunder is basically the best move to go with. But it's gonna get replaced after the battle's done. Next up, we have Gyarados Floatzel, holding the Life Orb with the Jolly Nature. There's a reason I actually went with Floatzel here as my 5th Pokemon, which we'll get to that soon. But Gyarados has Technician for its ability, which powers up 60% or less attacking moves. And there's a reason for that. And I'll show you guys the reason right here. Floatzel gets the moves Surge Strikes, Aqua Jet, Fake Out, and Icy Wind. Floatzel is a really fast Pokemon, so most of the time it's gonna be outspeeding a lot of these Pokemon. And Surge Strikes is a really good move. It's basically the main signature move of Urshifu, and it basically hits about 2 to 3 times, mostly 3 times, and it gets a critical hit with every single one of them. So this is basically critical hitting, and the fact we're really fast. Aqua Jet is for priority, Fake Out again for priority, and Icy Wind to lower speed down. I would say Floatzel is actually a really good Pokemon in Radical Red, which got a major buff, like a lot of other Pokemon did. Last but not least, we have Goofy the Gyarados, with the Gyarados sight and with the Jolly Nature. This is gonna be our Mega Pokemon here, and yes, Misty does use a Gyarados in the Let's Go games, so it does officially count. Gyarados with the Intimidate ability because we don't need Moxie because we're a Mega Pokemon. We have the moves Crunch, Dragon Dance, Ice Fang, Aqua Fang. Dragon Dance is going to be our move to sweep with. Crunch is for Agapa, Ice Fang for Lance, and Aqua Fang for Stab. Basically, Goofy's going to be our main sweeper here, if we actually get a sweep off with Goofy. But the thing I also want to say about is that I'm not going to do my, I guess you could say, going into this series anymore. I'm actually gonna save that for the end of the video because I actually don't want to spoil it for you guys. But now, with that said and done, onwards to your Elite Four battles. Alright, first up is against Lorelei. She leads with a Polito and a Poliwrath. I lead off with Light and Beauty. This is basically the strategy that I'm gonna go with right here. Is that I'm gonna use Light and Beauty to start thundering her entire team. It will earn Beauty with Freeze Drive. So Polito goes directly for the Scald, which I will say, Lorelei, I don't have much of a problem with because here's the thing. My team is mostly coverage against her. So going in, I actually wasn't gonna be that afraid with her. However, it does prove to be a bit of a solid battle. So I went for the Thunder right up on Poliwrath here, and this is basically almost a KO because of the Focus Sash. But with the Freeze Dry and the Poliwrath, I decided to get rid of it because my strategy is exactly the same before. Get rid of her other Pokemon, but it's not Politoed. Because Politoed is actually not a threat at all. So it's perfect to just gang up on her other Pokemon. Next up, we got the Mega Swampert. So I decided to switch right into Goofy in order to get the Intimidate off. Because here's the thing. We don't want to have Beauty take a lot of damage, and I could sack off life for later when the time calls for it. Because I'm trying to play things smart here. Anyway, she Mega Evolves up at Swampert and goes directly for an Earthquake here, which mostly Beauty is going to be taking it. But the problem does lie with her trying to take out the Politoed. Because I don't want to deal with her next Pokemon afterwards. So I'm just going to go straight for the Freeze Dry, which is ×4 effective against this Swampert. And it did about half to it. But hey, you know, we get to basically two-shot it. And hopefully it actually does end up being well. So I want to try and set up a Dragon Dance with the Gyarados. And of course, I forgot to Mega Evolve. Like always, I constantly keep forgetting to press the button to Mega Evolve. So now I'm basically taking 2 direct hits from Gyarados on Mega Evolve, but we take both of those hits and we went directly for the Freeze Strike, and this took out the Swampert. Next up, it's going to be Dracovish, which this is going to be a massive problem here, because I'm pretty sure Dracovish is holding the Choice Scarf, so it's relatively going to be outspeeding me. But we outsped it, even with the Choice Scarf, and it almost took out the Dracovish. It went for the Outrage on Beauty, and I basically ended up letting Beauty go down here, even though I probably should have just switched out, even though I was gonna die to it, because I am weak to it. But hey, it ain't Goofy got burned by the burn, so that's highly unfortunate. After some contemplating, I decided to go out right into Carbuncle here as a way to try to outspeed the Dracovish, because I need to get rid of our Dracovish fast here. So I'll go directly for the Thunder, and this definitely should take out the Dracovish, and I will get some damage off on the Politoed here, but it's fine because I don't think this is going to kill the Politoed. Thankfully, it basically put it below red, or at least before red, and Politoed took me out with a Skull. I decided to send out Ghetto the Float Cell, while Lorelei goes directly into a Primal Kyogre. Which, okay, again, my strategy is still once again to get after her at a Pokemon. And because Primal Kyogre is a massive threat, we have to get that thing off the field incredibly fast. So we're basically just fake outing it, and then just going straight for the Thunder on it. And we got the Paralyze off on the Kyogre, so that's really good. Politoed obviously goes for the Scald on Starmie, which that's not even that big of a problem, because now we could officially go directly for yet another Thunder, and we get to take out the Kyogre. We go for the Thunder, Kyogre is taken care of, and now we could hit the Politoed for a Surge Strike, and I guess now it's finally time we get Politoed off the field. Now we can make it a 1 against 4 battle. Last but not least, Lorelei has the Kingdra. Because we're locked right into Thunder, we have to go for the Thunder here, even though it's weak to Dazzling Gleam, but that's something we're gonna have to deal with unless we switch out. But honestly, I think it's perfectly fine here, because with Thunder and Icy Wind, this should basically lower down Kingdra's speed and get it below half. And so even if Kingdra were to take one of us out, essentially we could basically outspeed the Kingdra, and this would relatively beat her. So yeah, I think we basically got this match right in the bag here. So we basically would take out the Kingdra right here with a clean Thunder, and we beat Lorelei with the 4-0 victory. Okay, next up is against Bruno, and Bruno has always been proven to be our hardest member of the Elite Four, and he still lives up to that reputation. So here's how the battle against Bruno basically turned out for the first time. So Bruno leads off with the Infernape, and I basically give it a clean one-shot with the Surge Strike. This is why Surge Strike is amazing here. Next up, he brings out the Urshifu, which is holding the Choice Scarf. So it's probably going to be locked into either Wicked Blow or Close Combat. So I decided I'm just going to get some damage off the Urshifu and just let Ghetto go down. Which honestly, I feel that's probably my biggest mistake. That's how I feel, because Ghetto is my fastest Pokemon. And it basically got locked right into Close Combat. So now I'm basically have to think of a way to essentially outcome with the Close Combat, but Ghetto does get taken care of, so that's really sucky though. I decided to go right into Goofy here so I can get the Intimidate off, and because it's locked into Close Combat, I could basically try to not Mega Evolve here, and want to actually try and sweep Bruno with Dragon Acid, because I know going for the Mega Evolve is a terrible idea, but he unfortunately got the critical hit with the Close Combat, and that basically relatively kills my chances of sweeping. When I decided to Mega Evolve, is that I thought I was gonna outspeed the Urshifu at +1 Dragonance with Urshifu holding the Choice Scarf. Apparently that wasn't the case. Urshifu still outspeeds even with a +1, and I get taken out with a Close Combat. So I'm like, well, I'm probably screwed for this round. So I went to Carbuncle here so I could try and take out the Dazzling Gleam. And Radical AI actually is really smart. So he switched out Urshifu into Zacian, essentially predicting that I was going to go for the Dazzling Gleam on Urshifu. It's like Radical Red hacks here. Here it is. And also, yes, I got rid of Thunder and Torrid Skull, but hey, I already said that in the beginning of the video. But I switched right into Twitter, and we ended up having to take a Sword Stance Close Combat at boosted. And Twitter got knocking out. And I'm like, great, Zacian's probably gonna sweep my entire team. So now I basically just became to go up. How many Pokemon can I take out at this point? So I went into Carbuncle back out because I need to get the Choice Scarf Scald off so that I could hope and try to get a burn off. And we got the critical hit and the burn, which I was like, okay, good. At least we got the burn off it with the crit, so we could be able to take a hit from it. And we could be able to take it out with another Skull. So at least it wouldn't be a 5-0. Next up, we got the Komodo. And I decided I'm just going to switch right into Beauty to sock it off here. Because I know Komodo's just going to go straight for the Clangouous Soul. And I'm like, wait, now it's going to be setting up all over me. And then it basically also had the Throat Spray. So to make matters worse, I decided to just get some Ice Shot priority here, knowing that Beauty's gonna be going down. And with a Clangouous Scales, this basically just sends Beauty to the next dimension here. Sorry, Beauty, but we need to switch back into Carbuncle here in order to get a Psychic off. And Radical Red thought I was going to go straight for the Ice Beam, so it switched it to Lucario. So I was like, okay, can I be able to take out Lucario? And I decided to just go straight for another Psychic here, while Lucario Mega Evolves. And thankfully, Lucario doesn't have any extreme speed or priority moves other than Bullet Punch. So I could be able to take a hit, and we could actually take out Lucario. So we basically took out half of Bruno's team here. Next up, we got the Urshifu coming back out. And this is a major problem because Urshifu is a fighting Dark type. So I essentially have no other choice but to switch right into right here. And Urshifu went for the U-turn and goes into Conkeldurr. And this is the problem here. If I go for the Psychic with Starmie, it could take out the Conkeldurr, but now I still have Urshifu to deal with, and that's basically a problem. And that Scald isn't even doing anything because Conkeldurr is holding the Assault Vest. And that's gonna be a major problem. I decided I'm just gonna try and paralyze it, but it already got enough priority off with the Mach Punch to take Light out. And then I knew at this point that I was basically screwed. So I decided to just go for the Psychic to try to take out the Conkeldurr, knowing that I'm gonna lose the Urshifu. And that didn't even do even half. So round 1 was a bust. How did round 2 go? Round 2 was basically a bust. But I will say, there was actually a moment where I could have actually have beaten Bruno here. Goofy the Gyarados was my last Pokemon, and I took out half of Bruno's team. So Bruno was stuck with Conkeldurr, Urshifu, and Mega Lucario. And so I actually could have gotten a Dragonite sweep off with Goofy here against the Conkeldurr, which is a perfect way to start setting up. Simply because of the fact that I could just basically take out the remaining of Bruno's team with Goofy. But what happened is that Conkeldurr went for the Ice Punch, and I got frozen, and I basically didn't defrost in the entire battle. And I was just frustrated. I was like, God, this is gonna be another fail. And yeah, it basically turned out to be relatively another fail. And that's just really unfortunate, because I was hoping I was gonna beat Bruno during the second try, but untimely that wasn't the case, and now I basically have to go for a third round against him. So that really blows hard. So round 3 against Bruno. So round 3 against Bruno obviously leads off with the Infernape. I'm gonna lead off with Ghetto here. And I'm basically just gonna go straight for the Surge Strike. And this basically is a clean one-shot. or 2-shot, depends on how you look at it, to take out the Infernape. But now here comes the Urshifu, and I decide I'm just gonna let Gyarados go down, and I'm just gonna get some damage off with the Surge Strikes here, so that I could be able to go into Starmie, and basically bait the switch right into Zacian. And Bruno did exactly what I wanted, so he switched Urshifu right into Zacian, and I basically get to hit it with a clean Scald here. So hopefully we get the burn off of it, and we didn't, but we get a chance to go for another burn, and it didn't. So I was like, that's very unfortunate here, but hopefully the Dirt Scald actually takes out the Zacian. And it does. It got a critical hit. Zacian's taken care of. So even with the Sword Dance, we basically got rid of it. And now here comes the Urshifu back out. I outsped it, and we went for the Scald, and that took it out with another critical hit. So I was like, okay, this might be our chance to win here. Kamo comes out, and I decided to switch out because I'm locked right into Scald. And I decided to switch right into Light here so that I could basically sack it off. Or at the very least, try to get a Thunder Wave off on it, so that I could at least try to outspeed it. But it basically did get the Clangler Scales and the Throat Spray up, so we're basically gonna have to try to see if we could live a Clangler Scale so that we can get a Thunder Wave off on it. And can we at least take one? We didn't. I was like, God, that's gonna be a problem. So I decided to go out right into Carbuncle here. Essentially decided to just go straight for the Psychic here to see how much damage I can do to it, because I want to try and take out this Kamo fast. And we almost took it out. And unfortunately, Carbuncle is gonna go down here because it's not bulky at all. So Carbuncle does unfortunately get taken out. But we do have priority Ice Shot on Beauty, and we could basically take out the Kamo here with priority. So this is perfect enough so Kamo gets taken care of, so it wouldn't be sweeping our entire team here. And now out comes Conkeldurr. So now I basically decide I'm just going to switch right into Goofy so I can go back to the exact same strategy I had before. Well, I'm gonna try and get a Dragonite sweep up on it. It went for the Drain Punch. Honestly, that wasn't gonna do much. But hey, you know, that's basically what happens when we have Lapras up front. So, now it's time to see if we can get some Dragonite sweeping off on it. Ice Punch, how much that's gonna do. That did a pretty good number. I decide I'm gonna just go straight for the Aqua Fang here. And do about over half to it. So now it's basically gonna be like, it's gonna have to go for the Mach Punch, or it's gonna have to take Goofy out. And it took Goofy out for critical, and I was like, wait. So that's incredibly frustrating. So now I have to go right into Beauty here in order to try and get some more damage off on it. So I went directly for the Draco Meteor. The unfortunate problem is the fact that because it's holding the Assault Vest, I essentially have to try and get plenty of damage off on it, but now that my attacks are all special, and basically the Assault Vest is just gonna neuter all these attacks. So essentially, I have to now try and get a Skull Burn, or I'm gonna have to switch right into Twitter here. So I'm gonna have to switch right into Twitter here in order to keep Beauty alive here. So I decided the best option to do with Twitter is obviously set up some stockpiles, because now this Conkeldurr is just gonna get right up to full health with the amount of Drain Punches that it has. So, big priority, just stockpiling up until it runs out of Drain Punches. That's basically what we're gonna be doing. And also going for some recovers off on it so that we can gain back our HP, so that Conkeldurr hopefully wouldn't take Twitter out. So while Conkeldurr just constantly keeps going for these Drain Punches, we're just gonna stockpile up, get up to +3, and now that we're at +3, the big priority now is essentially trying to get Skull Burnings off on it, so that we can basically try and take it out a lot more faster. So Scald hopefully gets the burn off, and it doesn't, so that sucks. We're gonna go for the Skull once again, while it's constantly just gonna keep punching me with those drain punches. And it still can't get through my Quagsire's defenses. And again, we can't get a burn off on it. Again, go straight for another drain punch. And again, it doesn't do anything. So, again, hit it with another Scald. And again, that doesn't burn it. So, we're just gonna constantly keep going for Scald. And now it's just stuck right into going for Mach Punch. So I'm pretty sure it's all out of drain punches. So we just stall out of its drain punches. And now all it can go for are just these Mach Punches. So this is actually really humorous at this point. Where it's now basically just us essentially just going for Scald and Mach Punch, recover, Mud Shot back to back to back. But I would have to save up my Mud Shots because Mega Lucario is the last one. So I'm gonna need these Mud Shots. So Scald and Recover are essentially gonna be our main two moves at this point. So that is actually gonna be something. And as I went for Mud Shot a few times, so I could protect my Scald PP. But yeah, I think it's time to just go for like Recovers in order to get back up to full health. So now once we deal with the Mega Lucario, we would be at full health. And now we're basically just gonna constantly keep going for Scalds and Mud Shots and Mud Shots. And so far, throughout about 8 Scalds, we haven't even gotten a single burn. And I was just like, come on, get the burn. And now we got the burn. After like 9 Scalds later. But thankfully, after like a few more Mud Shots and burn damage, or at least 1 Mud Shot. But thankfully, after like 1 Mud Shot and some burn damage, Conkeldurr gets taken care of. And now all we have left is the Mega Lucario. And thankfully, Twitter is basically insanely jacked right now. So I think we could be able to deal with the Mega Lucario here. So it's trying to set up with these Sword Stands so I could sweep against Twitter. But with these Mud Shots, I think we could be able to take it out. And we got the Mud Shot speed lower. It's gonna obviously still outspeed me, but we're at +1 right now. So we're still basically gonna be taking these close combats. But it did over half, and that's a really big problem. And this is at +2. That just shows just how good Mega Lucario is. But thankfully, Mud Shot takes out the Mega Lucario. We beat Bruno with the 2-0 victory. And now, we got Agapa upon us. That's gonna be the other big problem that we're gonna have to be dealing with. So, let's do it, Agapa. Next up, we got Agapa. And Agapa has proven time and time again to be a very difficult opponent. Obviously, during our last challenge against her with the Water-type team, she has proven to be the strongest member of the Elite Four. And she still currently lives up to our reputation. Well, kind of. But anyway, she leads off with the Grimmsnarl, and I lead off with Float Cell. I decided to go for the Surge Strikes, or she set up to Reflect. Thankfully, Surge Strikes actually bypasses the Reflect, so we basically get to do maximum critical hit damage against the Grimmsnarl, and it basically 2-shots the Grimmsnarl with 2 Surge Strikes. Next up is the Dragapult, and I decided I'm going to switch right into Goofy, so that we could basically go for the Mega Evolve. And Dragapult goes for the Dragonite here, and this is pretty worrisome, but we decided to Mega Evolve to hopefully go for the Crunch. And Agapa gets greedy and goes straight for another Dragonite at +2. So we end up going for the Crunch, and it did relatively about over half. So that's really good. It got the defense low as well. So we decided I'm just gonna switch right into Beauty here, so that I could basically sack it off, so that I can get a free switch into another Pokemon. So Beauty gets taken care of with 2 Dragonauts, which is also Life Orb boosted, so that's another big problem. So I decided I'm gonna switch right into Ghetto to Float Cell, because it and Starmie are the 2 fastest members of my team. And unfortunately, Dragapult outspeeds Float Cell, and it takes it out. So this basically proves that essentially, Dragapult at +2 outspeeds my entire team now. So now I basically got to the point where I'm like, okay, who could take the most hits? That's basically the big problem that I'm now coming off to at this point. I decided I'm gonna go into Twitter here, so that because now I decided I'm just gonna stall into recovers, because Dragapult is holding the Life Orb. So if I constantly keep going for recover spam, I could be able to take out the Dragapult with the Life Orb damage. Yeah, it's a little bit cheap, but I think that's probably our only way at this point. Or else we're gonna have to sacrifice more and more Pokemons in order to take out the Dragapult. Which if I do that, it's basically like me admitting that I basically lost. So I decided I'm just gonna recover stall here until Dragapult takes itself out with the Life Orb. Which thankfully it's only like 2 recovers, so it wasn't that big of a deal. But I did have to take it out with the Life Orb. And also the Reflect was off, which is a really good thing. But now comes to Hydreigon, so I decided I'm gonna go for the recover here, so that I could see how much damage Hydreigon's gonna be doing. And that Dragapult did an awfully lot of damage. So after a recover and leftovers back up, I'm almost back up to full HP. So now I think it's time I try and set up some stockpiles here. So I end up taking a Dragon Pulse right to the face, end up taking a Dark Pulse right to the face, and now, can I take another Dark Pulse to the face? And I did. I survived with 8 HP, and I got to recover back up. So I managed to get a second recover back up after that Dark Pulse, which is doing pretty little damage. I decided I'm just gonna go for the Skull to try to get a burn off, and for some odd reason, she decided to switch out right into Spectria. I don't know why Agapa did that, but she switched out into Spectria and we got the burn off of it. So I think it's time we actually set up our third stockpile, see how much Spectria is gonna do. It did a decent amount of damage. We set up the stockpile, we got our third stockpile up, and now I think it's time we start the attacking and recovering. I decided to go for the Mud Shot, and again, she decided to switch out right into Hydreigon. Again, I don't know why she did this, but she did it, so we gotta take it, essentially. I'm now going for the Scald here because now I think it's time we try and get some burn damage off of it. And we didn't get the burn, and unfortunately it's holding the leftovers now, so this is just making all these Scald damage, basically doing little to none. And she again switches out right into Spectria. Again, still don't know why. I mean, she resisted both Scald and Mud Shot would do nothing, but she decided she's just gonna switch out into Spectria. I don't know why, but Agapa's just weird. I decided I'm just gonna go for the Mud Shot here while Spectria goes for the Shadow Ball. It gets a special defense lower, and that's a major problem, especially when we get to the Hydreigon. But we got Mud Shot off, it lowers the speed, but because Twitter is insanely slow, I don't think Spectria is gonna be slower than it. So at the time, I'm just gonna go for another recover while Spectria goes for another Shadow Ball. And again, it gets yet another special defense lower. And that really blows. And I mean, that really, really blows. So now it's basically like, well, I'm probably gonna be dead to Hydreigon. So after thinking about it, I decided to try to see if Stockpile actually does get me another boost with the special defense. But apparently, that actually doesn't, and it was basically just false hope at that point. But I tried anyways because Spectria is gonna go down to yet another burn here. And now that we're back to normal special defense, I don't think Twitter is gonna be doing anything at this point. I decided to try and get a recover off, but it didn't restore that much. And Spectria did get taken down with a burn. So that's Spectria down, so that's half of Agapa's team down. But now out comes the Hydreigon. And I decided, you know what, I'm just gonna sack Twitter off now. So Hydreigon just goes straight for the Giant Pulse. We end up managing to survive at 6 HP. I'm just gonna try and get a Scald, hopefully for a burn. It didn't, and yep. That was very unfortunate. That was basically Twitter's last breath, and Twitter gets taken care of. So I decided to go around the Carbuncle here because this is the reason why I taught it Dazzling Games, or at least one of the reasons. Because this is 4 times effective against Hydreigon. That immediately O-code to Hydreigon. So, 2 Pokemon left. So out comes to Mega Gengar, and I decide that I'm gonna switch right into Light here, so that I could basically ignore off the Choice Scarf, so that I could basically go for the Psychic against the Gengar, and also try and get a Paralyze off of it with Thunder Wave. Agapa Mega Evolves the Gengar, and go straight for the Nasty Plot, so that's gonna be a really big problem. Gonna go straight for the Thunder Wave, and I gave Light the Focus Sash, so that it could take at least 1 hit, so that I could be able to go straight for the Thunder Wave, and we get a free Thunder Wave off on it, and we basically get some Scald damage. Well, we got it for a Paralyze, which is great, because then we can go for another Scald against it, and that almost took out the Mega Gengar, but it got paralyzed once again. We used another Scald, and that takes out the Mega Gengar, and Agapa's down to our last Pokemon, which is Marshadow, which we all know Marshadow is a massive threat around these parts. So I decided I'm just gonna sack off Light here, because Marshallow's just gonna go straight for the Shadow Sneak. So after so much thinking, I went into Carbuncle here, which, okay, to be fair, I will say this is kind of like my mistake here. I should have went into Gyarados first, try to get some damage off, and then basically try to take out the Marshadow. But I decided I'm just gonna try to outspeed, hope Psychic would one-shot it. It unfortunately didn't. Marshadow survives, and Starmie gets taken out with a Spectria Thief. So now it's up to Goofy left, and it's gonna get hit by a Drain Punch. I have to hope that Gyarados actually takes it, and it does. So I probably could have just went into Gyarados first, risk with Starmie, get hit by a Shadow Sneak, but I could actually potentially live that. But unfortunately, Aqua Fang almost took out the Marshadow. And unfortunately, because of this, it went for the Drain Punch, and Agapa beats me with a 1-0. We almost beat Agapa on our first try. That's actually really something. But unfortunately, that never came to be. However, now that basically I end up getting the 0-1 against her, I actually know what I can do against Agapa now for round 2. So, let's do a round 2. Round 2 against Agapa, and now we know what to do. She leads off with the Grimmsnarl. Same old, we all know the gist of this. She basically goes for the Reflect, I go for the Surge Strikes, and then I go for another Surge Strikes, and Grimmsnarl gets taken care of. Dragapult comes out, so I decide I'm just gonna go right into Goofy over here, and I decide I'm just gonna try and go for the Ice Fang here, so that basically without Mega Evolving, so that I could actually save the Mega Evolution, so I don't have to worry about Marshadow. So I end up going right back into Beauty, and Dragapult goes for yet another Dragonite, so thankfully I could be able to go straight for the Ice Shot priority against it, and this basically did very little against Dragapult. And I was like, damn, Dragapult is really good here. But basically Beauty gets taken care of with the Dragonaut, so I end up going back into Goofy here, so I can get yet another Intimidate off of it. And I decided I'm just gonna go straight for the Crunch here. Wow, we basically got the Intimidate off on it. Yeah, I probably could have Mega Evolved, but I decided I'm just gonna try and get some Crunch damage off of it, because at this point I think Goofy's just gonna be taken care of. So I end up letting Goofy go down here, but I don't think I really need Goofy for the Marshadow, because I think I have a plan against it. But the Reflect did wear off, so that's great. But now I know for the fact she's gonna go anti-Dragon here. And now, knowing from last time where I actually did manage to take a Dragon Pulse, I decided I'm just gonna go straight for the stockpiles here. So I went for stockpile number 1, and I decided to go for the Recover. Because here's the thing, Dark Pulse can actually flinch against me, but we didn't get flinched and we got to recover off against it. And we end up going for another stockpile here while Hydreigon goes for another Dark Pulse. And this time, it got the flinch. And I was like, great. So I end up trying to see if I can get another stockpile. Hopefully it doesn't get flinched here. Thankfully it doesn't. We got a second stockpile up. But now I don't know if I could be able to take a Dragon Pulse or a Dark Pulse. So I end up going for the recover. Hopefully it takes the Dark Pulse. It does. 7 HP, and it doesn't flinch. So I was like, oh, good. So we got to a cover up. Hydreigon goes for another Dark Pulse. We obviously took that. It got flinched again. So getting flinched twice off the Dark Pulse is just really bad. And I hope that Twitter actually doesn't get flinched here. Thankfully it didn't. Got the another recover off. So now I have to try to go for another recover. But this time, Agapa actually switches Hydreigon into Spectria. And we got the recover back up to full HP. So that's great. But now it's time we actually try to get some Scald burn damage off. Hopefully we get the burn off against it. So Scald. It didn't get the burn this time. So again, I'm going to try and get the Scald off. And this time she switched into Hydreigon. So calling that, I decided I'm just gonna go straight for the Scald again. It didn't get the burn off of it, so I ended up deciding I'm just gonna go for a stockpile up, so that hopefully I could take these Dark Pulse and Dragon Pulses. So now I'm basically at +3 in the stockpile department. So now the big concern is with Spectria, trying to lower my special defense with Shadow Ball. And especially since Agapa switches back into Spectria, that's the thing I have to worry about. And again, Scald didn't get the burn off of it, so that's very unfortunate. And Shadow Ball hits me again. And this time it didn't get the special defense lower. Got the Scald off. Again, didn't burn. I probably should have just went for the Scald here, but that was my own misdoing. So instead, she ended up switching back into Hydreigon. Even though it had to levitate. I should have done that, but it's fine because it kind of doesn't really matter at the end. But we probably could have at least tried to get a Scald burn off on it. But we ended up getting the Scald burn off the Hydreigon, and I was like, okay, good. I actually want the Hydreigon to get burned, so that with Spectria, it's basically low on HP, and I think we could actually work off against it at this point. Hydreigon constantly goes for the Dark Pulse. I end up getting flinched. So again, I'm gonna try to get a recover off. Hopefully we don't get flinched. And we didn't. We got the recover off. So Twitter in this Elite Four is actually really putting in the finest of work. Hydreigon goes for yet another Dark Pulse here. Because this is basically the thing that's gonna happen. She's gonna constantly keep going for Dark Pulse, Dragon Pulse, and basically gonna switch into Spectria. I'm actually hoping she switches into Spectria so that I could try to take it out. And basically she did. She switched right into Spectria. And I was like, okay, can we take out the Spectria here? We almost did. I decided to just go for the Scald here in case she does actually switch back into Hydreigon, but she didn't. She ended up getting the special defense lower, but we took out the Spectria here. But now we're at +2 special defense to try to deal against the Hydreigon. So Hydreigon's coming back out here. Thankfully it got burned, so we mostly can try to chip it down, especially when it had the leftovers. So we went for the Scald here. That did, again, pretty little damage, but again, mostly we're just gonna be trying to chip it down here. But honestly, I feel at this point, I think I should just sack Twitter here, simply because of the fact that I could actually take Hydreigon out with Carbuncle. But the issue is the fact that I need to safe switch into it, or else it will die to a Dark Pulse. So, knowing that Twitter really isn't gonna do much against Hydreigon, I decided I'm just gonna sack it off, just to go directly into Carbuncle for a safe switch, and go directly for the Dazzling Gleam, and this would definitely take out the Hydreigon. So now that leaves her down to just 2 Pokemon once again. Out comes Mega Gengar. So I decided once again, same plan as before, switch back into Light here. As she Mega Evolves, I'm predicting the nasty plot solely because of the switch prediction. And thankfully, she actually did that. She basically went for the nasty plot, and I was like, okay, great. Now all we need to do is hit a Thunder Wave. She went for the Sludge Wave. We could easily take at least 1 hit solely because of the Focus Sash. And we got the Thunder Wave against it, so now we're basically always gonna outspeed the Mega Gengar. So Scald would basically do a pretty good number to the Gengar. And this time, Gengar didn't get fully paralyzed by any means, and it took Light out. But that's perfectly fine because we have Gyarados defloats out, simply because of the fact that I want to preserve Carbuncle for the Marshadow. Because I know it isn't gonna one-shot, but Gyarados could easily outspeed the Marshadow. And hopefully with Gyarados and Carbuncle, we could take out the Marshadow. So I went for the Surge Strike against it, and with the crit damage, that did a pretty good number. So knowing Marshadow, I think it's gonna go for the Spectral Thief, because there's no reason why she's not gonna go for the Bulk Up. And thankfully, she actually did go for the Spectral Thief. And here's the thing, I expect Gyarados to go down here. Or Jetto, I always call it Gyarados, but Jetto. I should just nickname Gyarados now thinking about it, if I'm just gonna constantly call it Gyarados. But I decided to let Jetto go down, and I decided I'm just gonna go wind the Carbuncle, and it's gonna have no choice but to go for a Shadow Sneak. So now we have to take at least 1 Shadow Sneak. And we took it with 10 HP, we went for the Psychic, and down goes the Marshadow, and we beat it Agapa on our 2nd attempt. But yeah, Agapa has always proven to be like our most difficult opponent in Elite 4, but so far, Bruno has taken that spot. So I gotta say, that was great because we ended up losing to Agapa 5 times beforehand with our Water type team, but now we managed to beat Agapa without losing 5 times, and now we can move on to Lance, and I actually have a strategy to hopefully deal against Lance. So hopefully that strategy actually does work. So now, here comes Lance. And here's what I have against Lance here. I decided I'm gonna be facing the Garchomp team here because obviously the Dracozolt is on his team and we're basically weak to it. But we do have a plan against it. Garchomp is the lead, go for the Stealth Rocks. I decided I'm just gonna go for the Freeze Dry and Ice Shock combination. And this should automatically take out the Garchomp. So Garchomp goes down with relative ease, but the unfortunate problem is he did manage to set up the Stealth Rocks. Out comes Dracozolt, and now here's the plan I have against it. I end up giving Light the Air Balloon, so that basically I could take any ground type moves that Melmetal can do against me. So if Melmetal were to go for the Earthquake, I basically could switch to Light with no problem. And I know for the fact that Lance was gonna switch out to Dracozolt, so I end up just going for a free Thunder Wave off on the next Pokemon, which is Melmetal. So I decided I'm just gonna preserve life for later, so that it could be like my free switch basically. And I decided I'm gonna switch mine to Twitter here, predicting it to go for the Thunder Punch or the Ice Punch. It ended up going for the Ice Punch instead, but Twitter is pretty bulky here, so we could be able to take these Ice Punches, and we decided to go set up our stockpiles here. Melmetal's best options are to go for the Earthquake. So we end up taking these hits because Melmetal, it's a good Pokemon. It's mostly more bulky than anything, but thankfully we can mostly take these hits. We go for a second stockpile up, and now here comes the Dragonite. I decided to switch right into Goofy because yes, I wasted all those stockpiles, but the thing is, Dragonite is gonna go for the Dragonite, and I don't want to try and basically let Dragonite set up all willy-nilly. I basically have to try and take it out as fast as possible. But the thing is, Dragonite does hold the Lumberry, so it isn't weakness policy boosted, so that's a really good thing. But it is multi-scale, so it's gonna be able to take an Ice Fang, but let's see how much damage that does, and it ended up avoiding the attack, and I was like, oh god, and it went a +3 off. Although it's now currently +2 because of the Intimidate. But we could have actually have done like tons of damage to this Dragonite. But even with the multi-scale, we still one-shot it. And I was like, oh wait, I forgot. Gyarados actually has Mold Breaker for its ability. I actually completely forgot that Gyarados had Mold Breaker as its mega ability. So I was like, that actually bypasses the multi-scale. So I was like, oh crap, I forgot. But thankfully, me forgetting that actually works to my advantage. And that basically one-shotted the Dragonite. And I was just wondering, like, what happened? And then that's when I realized about the Mold Breaker. But now out comes the Dracozolt. And once again, we're going back into light here because of the fact that we basically are going to be unaffected by its electric type attack because of Volt Absorb, and we even avoided the attack. So I end up deciding to go for the Scald here, predicting that he's going to switch into Melmetal. And again, he switched into Melmetal, so I got a free Scald damage off on it, and that did a pretty good number to it, in all things considered. I decided to switch back into Twitter here, because for the Lance battle, there's going to be a lot of switching around, because I basically also had to preserve my Pokemon for the Primal Dialga that's going to be coming out soon. So I'm going to need all my Pokemon in order to deal against it. So Metal ended up getting a critical hit Ice Punch, and I end up going for the Recover here. Metal gets Void Paralyzed, which is a good thing. So now I don't really have to worry about the Dragonite. So really the only Dragon types I have to worry about are Dialga and Salamence. So Lance is going to switch out to Metal right into Salamence here. Yes, Dracozolt is a Dragon type, but I don't have to really worry too much about it. So I end up getting a +2 off the stockpile here. And I decided I'm just going to be switching Twitter out right into Carbuncle, so that because it's going to be going for the Dragon Dance, I'm like, no, I don't want to have this Salamence sweep it up against me. So Lance Mega Evolves to Salamence, and it went for an obvious Dragon Dance, which I basically called it. And I tried to go for the Ice Beam, and unfortunately, Salamence are +1. It's +1. Outspeeds Carbuncle. And I was like, oh god. So that's a really big problem here. But I decided my next best option is to sack Beauty. Solely because of the fact that Beauty isn't really going to do much to anything against Lance, because it is a Dragon type, and Lance's Dragons are faster than Beauty. So I'm basically just trying to get some chip damage off against it. But Salamence went for the Double Edge, took Beauty out, and Double Edge almost took it out with the Recoil, but thankfully we have Ghetto, we have Fake Out, and this one Fake Out is basically enough to take out the Salamence. So Mega Salamence is taken care of. So that's half of Lance's team down, and we only have 4 of our Pokemon left up. Next up, we have the Melmetal coming right back out, and once again, I will be switching into Twitter here, predicting the Thunder Punch, because I know for a fact it's gonna go for the Thunder Punch, and it did. Thunder Punch did nothing against me. So I ended up deciding to go for the stockpiles to try to set back up against Melmetal so that I could take more of these hits. And I decided to go for the Mud Shot here because now I don't really have to worry about Salamence coming out. So I could just freely go for Mud Shots whenever I want. So I went for the Mud Shot, did about a pretty good number to the Dracozolt, and I decided, you know what, I'm gonna try and set up some stockpiles against it. It is holding the Choice Scarf, and it's locked directly into Dragon Claw. So at the very least, that's actually at least a pretty good number, but it is also Hustle for its ability, so it could miss. I decided I'm just gonna go for the Recover while Lance switches out right back into Melmetal. I got the Recover up. We're back up to full HP, and we're just gonna constantly keep going for Mud Shots because, again, we don't have to worry about any of his flying types anymore. So now it's basically just a Mud Shot war. He ended up switching back out into Dracozolt again. So I'm surprised he actually didn't go into his Primal Dialga because that's what I was preparing for. But Mud Shot does really good portion to it, and Dracozolt goes for the Dragon Claw. And it did a pretty good number, but we go for another Mud Shot. and Dracozolt is taken care of. So Lance is down to just 2 Pokemon remaining. Next up, Melmetal's coming right back out. So I end up going for the Mud Shot here. It does do pretty good numbers, but Melmetal is holding the Assault Vest and it's pretty bulky. So now Melmetal decided to be switched back out, this time into Primal Dialga. And I was like, okay, now this is time we do the teamwork effort against it. But it is a Primal Dialga, and this is where it becomes a big problem. Because Primal Dialga is pretty bulky. It's pretty bulky. It has War of Time now, and War of Time is lowered to, I think, 80% or 70% accuracy. But it also switches out my Pokemon. So because of that, I'm no longer going to be keeping my setup moves against it. It also has Rest and Sleep Talk now, so that's something we're gonna have to worry against. So out comes with Light. I don't have to worry about Dracozolt anymore, so I don't need to worry about the Air Balloon. So Light gets plummeted by a War of Time, and out comes Goofy now. So now this, again, it's basically gonna be a team effort to try to take out Dialga. So I went for the Earthquake. I want to get super effective damage against it. I got rid of Crunch for it, just in case, so that we can get super effective against Dialga. So we're gonna constantly keep spamming for the Earthquakes here, because we basically need to get a lot of damage against it. So Dialga goes for another War of Time, and Goofy almost gets taken out. Out comes Light again. We end up getting hit by the Stealth Rocks damage. War of Time with the Stealth Rocks damage is pretty good, actually. It's a pretty good strategy. Go for the Ice Beam, do a pretty good number against it. I decided to let Light go down, because here's the thing. I don't want Dialga to go for the rest. That's the thing that I don't want it to do. So I decided to go right into Twitter here to try to go for the Mud Shots, so that once again, I could try and get super effective damage. And that's not doing a whole lot. Thankfully, it didn't go for the rest. It went for the War of Time again, which I was perfectly fine with. Hopefully it switches right into my Gyarados. It does switch right into Gyarados, aka Goofy. But now basically I decide I'm just gonna go for yet another Earthquake here. Hopefully this takes out Dialga. This almost took out the Dialga. It went for the Flamethrower, and that takes Goofy out. So Goofy gets taken out. I decide I'm just gonna go right into Twitter here, because I don't really need it that much against the Melmetal, which is going to be the last Pokemon. Or at the very least, actually, instead of sacking Twitter off, I end up thinking like, hey, can I actually beat Melmetal with just Twitter? So I decide, you know what? Because Twitter's still alive, and because I outsped the Melmetal, I could just go for the recover here and try to get myself back up to full HP. Because Melmetal is gonna do nothing against me. It went for the Double Iron Bosch, which that isn't really gonna do much. And because of that, I can go yet for another recover here. And we got ourselves almost back up to full, and it got fully paralyzed. I decided to set up a stockpile against it so that I could take more of its attacks. And it did end up going for the Earthquake, but now I think it's time we go for the Mud Shots, because this is Lance's final Pokemon, and I don't need to set up a ton of stockpiles against it, because now I think it's time we try to get rid of Lance here. And Lance is basically, at this point, he's basically struggling. Like, Lance is basically struggling against Twitter right now. So I end up going for Mud Shots again. And Melmetal gets to survive for one more turn. And for its last turn, it decides to go for a Double Iron Bosch. And obviously, Double Iron Bosch ain't really doing a whole lot against me. So I end up going for one more Mud Shot. This takes out the Melmetal with a pointless critical hit. And we beated Lance on our first try. We haven't actually beaten Lance on our first try since our Water Monotype challenge. So that's actually something. I was kind of mostly worried against Lance, but I actually did devise a strategy against him. And this strategy actually paid off, and we managed to beat Lance on our very first attempt. But now, we have the champion battle. And the champion in this update, oh boy, his team is so much more lethal here, because his team, well, let's just say, it's gonna be all Ubers. Like, that's what we're gonna be dealing with. We're dealing against Ubers here, so toilet time. Let's go. Okay, round number 1 against the toilet. Obviously, because he's gonna be going to the toilet today. Because he's leading off with a Pheromosa. So, we're leading off here with Ghetto. I always constantly call it Ghetto for some reason. Probably because it looks ghetto. But, anyways, we're just gonna go for these Surge Strikes here. And basically, Pheromosa, it's a very fast Pokemon, but we basically are faster than it. And Pheromosa isn't bulky at all, and that's basically an easy one-shot. Now, here comes Eternatus, and this is where we're gonna get into some of our problems here. I decided I'm gonna switch right into Beauty here, so that I could basically sack it off. It ended up going for the Dynamax Cannon. And we actually survived that with 20 HP. So I was like, oh, that gives us a free Ice Shard. So we managed to get free Ice Shard damage against it. And obviously that didn't do much to anything. So Eternatus takes Beauty out. And now we're going to go right into Carbuncle here. So that we could go for these Psychics against it. Because Eternatus is Dragon Poison. So, how much is Psychic gonna do? It did a pretty good number against Eternatus. It goes for the Dynamax Cannon. And it almost took out Carbuncle. And then Toilet switches Eternatus out into his Mega Metagross. He used to have a Mega Blastoise, but now he has a Mega Metagross now. And that's so much more powerful than a Mega Blastoise. So I decided to switch right to Twitter here because I'm predicting either a Forward Punch or a Meteor Mash or a Zen Headbutt. Either one of these two, but it might go for the Forward Punch so that it gets the kill off. It did. It goes for the Forward Punch, and we took that pretty nicely. So I ended up deciding to switch right into Goofy here because I want to get the Intimidate off on it, and because it's no longer Clear Body anymore, and now it's... I think it's Iron Fist for its ability, because now it powers up its physical attacks, physical combat moves. I actually have to look this up for a quick sec. Okay, Mega Metagross has the Tough Claws ability, which basically does power up its physical attacking moves. That makes physical combat. So I end up Mega Evolving right into Mega Gyarados, predicting the Zen Headbutt, and just going for the Earthquakes here solely because of the fact that I don't have Crunch anymore. So I would have to go for Earthquake, which is basically our next best option. So Metagross goes for the Meteor Mash, and I took out the Metagross, so that's 2 Pokemon down against Toilet. Alright, next up is Glaria Domanitan. And I basically decided I'm just gonna sack Goofy off here. So I end up going for the Earthquake, even though I probably should have went for the Aqua Fang, but didn't really matter too much anyways. So I end up going right into Jetto here, because hopefully I could actually outspeed it, which Jetto is a pretty fast Pokemon. I probably should have just went for the Fake Out in order to get priority damage, but I was actually hoping this Surge Strike actually one-shots the Domanitan, because Domanitan isn't the bulky Pokemon at all, and it does. Domanitan gets a clean one-shot. That's half of Toilet's team down. And now here comes Yveltal, and this is the major problem here, because Yveltal, it's a very powerful Pokemon. It has the Assault Vest, it has Dark Hole, aka the Yu-Gi-Oh card. It has Oblivion Wing, and it's a pretty good Pokemon. So I decided I'm just gonna try and get some damage off on it with the Surge Strikes. And even with a crit, that didn't do that much damage at all. So that's a really big problem. Even though it did about over half to it, but if we take this Dark Hole, maybe we could be able to take it out. But unfortunately, it does have the Sucker Punch, so that's a really big problem. And even then, Dark Hole just straight up one-shots Jetto, so that Sucker Punch really didn't matter. And this is where I actually completely forgot it had Sucker Punch. Like, I actually forgot, because I wasn't actually looking up these moves. When I did, I actually forgot. Actually, I was looking up these moves, but I completely forgot about the Sucker Punch. And I just immediately wasted Carbuncle, and I was just like, crap. I just wasted Carbuncle. So that was pretty upsetting, to say the least. So I should have just fought that one through. Mistakes are mistakes. You gotta learn from it. But anyways, Light essentially gets almost a one-shot here. but I did manage to go for the Thunder Wave, get it nice and paralyzed, and I'm just gonna go straight for the Ice Beam, but unfortunately, it did have Sucker Punch, like I said, so light gets taken care of. And now Vicious leaves Twitter here, and this is where we get to the problem here. I have to literally stall out Yveltal's Dark Hole and Oblivion Wing, mostly with Oblivion Wing, because that's the issue. Because with Oblivion Wing, it just constantly restores back up to full HP, and unfortunately, we end up getting hit by so much damage here with that Dark Hole, where I have to hope he goes for the Sucker Punch, and it didn't. Oblivion Wing just did way too much damage, and Twitter gets taken care of, and we lost on our first attempt. Yeah, the champion for this one is actually really difficult because he has Ubers. So that's the thing we're gonna have to be dealing with. But now we have to go for round 2 here. And hopefully round 2 actually turns out to be a little bit more swimmingly. No pun intended anyways. So round 2 against the toilet. And obviously he's gonna be leading off with Pheromosa. We know the gist of it. The Endless Cycle and Repeat. We're going to be going for the Song and Dance here. We're going for the Surge of Strikes. That's basically just a clean one-shot against the Pheromosa. And now out comes the Eternatus. So once again, I decided I'm just going to switch off Beauty just to sack it off, solely because of the fact that I don't have any need against it. And I do need a safe switch in the Carbuncle so I can take these hits. So Beauty's gonna be on fortunate sack for this battle here. I would say Beauty at least did pretty solid against Elite Four, but it is basically kind of like our weakest team member, I guess you could say. But Beauty does get taken care of or taken out. So unfortunately, Beauty has to go down, but it's for the greater good here so that we can go right into Carbuncle, so that we could start going for these Psychics against the Eternatus. And Psychic did a pretty good number against it. It got a special defense lower, so it ended up going for the Dynamax Cannon. And that did pretty good against it. And I basically was stuck using Psychic because Choice Scarf, and I basically thought I was gonna be having to deal with the Metagross next, but it didn't actually happen. Toilet decided to just let Eternatus go down so that he could get a safe switch into Metagross. So I ended up deciding to switch right into Twitter because I need Metagross to Mega Evolve in order to get rid of the Clear Body ability so that I don't have to worry about the Clear Body interfering with Intimidate. So I ended up going for the Bullet Punch, and obviously Bullet Punch did absolutely nothing. And once again, we're gonna switch back out into Goofy here so that once again the same Song and Dance, we get the Intimidate against it, weakening its attack points even though it has Tough Claws for its ability. And Zen Headbutt did a pretty good number, but I decided, you know what, I'm gonna try and set up some Dragonance against it so that hopefully, I won't say sweep his entire team, I don't think it will sweep, but at the very least we could do at least pretty good numbers against it. And what I mean by it, I mean I'm talking about Toilet's entire team. So we end up going for the Earthquake here and +1 Dragonance. That almost took it out. It ended up going for the Meteor Mash, and obviously it's gonna go straight for the Bullet Punch here with a +1 attack, and ended up going for yet another Bullet Punch, or the first Bullet Punch after the +1 attack. We end up taking it with 50 HP and take out the Mega Metagross, and now we have Yveltal to deal with. Yep, Yveltal is up next. And this is where we once again go back to our prompts, because Yveltal went for the Sucker Punch and it took Goofy out. So this is where we go back into our prompts once again. I decided to send out Light here with once again holding the air balloon. Honestly, I probably should have thought to give it at least like the Focus Sash to at least take a hit, but it already took a hit anyway, so hopefully it takes this hit. It does actually, it took the hit, and Thunder Wave missed, and I was like, oh no, and it went for the Heat Wave, and we survived that. We survived the Heat Wave, got the Thunder Wave off, but now it's like, I decided, you know what, I'm gonna predict the Sucker Punch here, Decided to switch it to Carbuncle, but it went for the Heat Wave anyways. I probably should have done at least some damage off, but I was hoping he was going to go for the Sucker Punch here, but unfortunately that wasn't the case. I decided to go back into Light here, and I guess try to bait out some Sucker Punches, because that's what I want to try and do. I want to try and bait out all these Sucker Punches here. But I decided, you know what, screw it. I'm just going to go for an Ice Beam. Hope it gets fully paralyzed. It didn't work, and Sucker Punch got critted. So I was thinking, like, should I go Jetto or should I go Twitter? So after some consideration, I decided to go into Jetto, which I probably should have went with Twitter. But I tried to go for the Icy Wind, and it missed. And basically, this is what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to lower its speed down so that hopefully Twitter can be able to outspeed here. So that I can be able to, I guess you could say, outspeed this Yveltal, even though Twitter is very slow. But with a Thunder Wave and an Icy Wind lower, I'm hoping this actually does be enough. Unfortunately, Jetto does go down, and that really sucks. Because now the thing is, I have to hope Twitter outspeeds. It does, okay. Because Twitter outspeeds, I managed to actually outspeed it. So now, because previously, it did so much damage with its attacks with Dark Hole and Oblivion Wing. But this is where we get into our major problem. The problem is the simple fact that now I basically end up having to stall with stockpiles and recovers. But we'll get to that soon. But I got a +2 off the stockpiles. So really, going to Jetto was actually a much better option because I need to outspeed with Twitter. So that's actually a good idea. But unfortunately, because of this factor, Twitter is my last Pokemon, and I actually have to stall out Oblivion Wing and Dark Hole. Mostly Oblivion Wing, solely because it constantly keeps restoring its HP, and I do less damage to it, and it recovers more with the damage that I do to it. So that's a really big problem. So Oblivion Wing once again, it's gonna be doing pretty good number to it. It did at least like 70 damage to it. But yeah, I would have to go for, I want to actually try and go for a Scald here to see how much damage I could at least do to it. But apparently, looking at the amount of damage it did, I was like, yeah, with the amount of damage trying to recover, it's recovering more than I'm doing damage to it. So I was trying to hope I get it fully paralyzed, and I probably just realized at some point, like, yeah, this ain't doing it. So I would really have to stall out all of its Oblivion Wings. I think that's what I have to do it here. So I end up going for, once again, for another Scald here because I want to try and get so much damage off. But I probably should have realized at this point in time, I should just constantly keep stalling for stockpiles, and I probably should have recovered here. But I basically thought, like, if it goes for an Oblivion Wing or Dark Hole and gets a crit, Twitter is dead. If I basically don't get critted, Twitter survives. Because of the amount of damage that Oblivion Wing and Dark Hole did during the first time around, I essentially have to be incredibly trying to be a little more offensive here. But unfortunately, I realized I just can't basically stall out the Oblivion Wings and constantly go for Scalds. So I am gonna have to be able to stall out the Yveltal. So this just essentially became like an entire Star War at this point. So now after plenty of turns later, like this is basically what happened. I end up deciding to speed up the entire process here. But I literally have to stall out all of its moves. I have to stall out all of its Sucker Punch. I think it went out Sucker Punch. I had to stall all of its Dark Holes. I had to stall all of its Oblivion Wings. And all it had left at this point in time was Heat Wave, which is going to be doing nothing against me. But yeah, this was a pretty long process where I actually literally had to speed this up, because it was taking like about 20 or so minutes about to beat the Yveltal. And it's like, this is a really big thing, because Yveltal is doing more damage to me and restoring back its HP than I'm doing to it. So I essentially had no other option, so I had to keep up stalling with Scalds. And the problem is that if I run out of Scalds, I lose. Simply because of the fact that your Voltorb is gonna have to struggle itself to death, and I'm gonna need all these mud shots for the remaining 2 Pokemon. But thankfully, I really didn't need Scald that much against the remaining 2. But the thing is, this was an entire Star War. This was a legit Star War to get your Voltorb to run out of its moves. So that's something I had to do. I had to try to do this in order to try to win. So if I had to do Stall Tactics to try to do it, then I have to try to do Stall Tactics in order to do it. But thankfully, your Voltorb actually does run out of its moves here, because it just constantly goes for Heat Wave now, because it basically just had nothing left at this point. And I was able to do with one more Scald, took your Voltorb out, and now Toilet is down to just 2 Pokemon, and I only have Twitter to beat him with. Next up is Primal Groudon, and thankfully Primal Groudon doesn't have any grass type moves. The best thing it can hit me with is Precipice Blades, but the thing is I have to basically stall out sometimes, but thankfully I didn't have to stall out with the Groudon, and we could go for the Mud Shot here while I went for the Fire Punch for some reason. Once we constantly keep going for all these Mud Shots, we could be able to outspeed the Groudon because of the fact that it's basically not doing much, but for some reason it actually is going for Fire Punch. I don't know why it's not going for the Precipice Blades, but instead it's just going for these Fire Punches. So I'm actually perfectly fine with that, solely because of the fact that Fire Punch is weaker than Precipice Blades. But we got a -3 speed off with the Mud Shots, and I think now we can be able to outspeed it. And we do. We managed to outspeed the Primal Groudon. This is doing pretty good numbers to it, but thankfully Groudon's still constantly going for these Fire Punches. It did end up getting a critical hit with one, so I actually want to try and use Recover to recover back all these HP so that I could be able to be ready for the Glaria Domanitan. So thankfully Fire Punch didn't get another crit here, so I'm actually able to go back to doing these Mud Shots again, and now that we're faster, we could take it out a lot more faster here. So one more Mud Shot will be able to take out the Groudon, but I decided to end up going for yet another Recover because Fire Punch got, once again, another critical hit, and that's just very unfortunate here. And then Groudon went for another Fire Punch, and it got another critical hit. And I decided, you know what, I'm just gonna take out the Groudon here with the Mud Shot to deal with the Glaria Domanitan. So yes, we will not be at full HP for the Glaria Domanitan, but at least we're at a pretty good HP to try to hopefully deal against the Domanitan. The Glaria Domanitan is his last Pokemon. We're at our final 2. Glaria Domanitan does have Icicle Crash, but for some reason it's just going for these U-turn, and we basically have to get this speed lowered, and it's still going for these U-turns. I don't know why it's going for U-turn when Icicle Crash is clearly the better option, but because we are Water and Ground type, but I guess whatever floats his boat, I guess. He's just going for these U-turns for some reason. But anyways, Mud Shot's gonna have to be our MVP here for the attack. So we got its -3 speed down, and it's still faster than us because Glaria Domanitan is actually a pretty fast Pokemon. Mud Shot once again after another U-turn, and basically, can we actually do it? Nope, Domanitan is still faster, went for another U-turn. So even at -4, we're still slower than it. But it's perfectly fine because we took out the Glaria Domanitan and we beat a Toilet on our second attempt after essentially a failed attempt against the first time around. But yeah, we beat a Toilet and we became the champion. My thoughts on this entire one, I actually really enjoyed doing this one. The thing is, Bruno has once again proven to be the hardest member of the Elite Four for us to deal with. But I will say, we didn't actually lose a lot against this time around. We lost to Bruno twice, we lost to Agapa once, and we lost to the champion once. I think the best thing is the fact that we only lost like 4 times in this entire Elite Four. And this is my first time actually doing a monotype Elite Four challenge with the update. So I gotta say, we actually did pretty good actually for this time around. But I hope you guys actually do like the video. And if you guys do like the video, make sure you guys like the video down below. It's basically free and it helps show your support to the channel. And also make sure you guys subscribe and click the bell for notification as well. Next up will be Lieutenant Surge. I don't know how well that's gonna do because Surge's team is not the best, but hopefully it does end up doing pretty well. I say the key words, hopefully. And so, until then, I'll see you all next time for the next episode of the Pokemon Monotype Gym Leader Elite Four Challenge.